What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the next episode of Mission Control, a podcast that talks with nonprofit leaders. However, this season we are going to be talking all about the mission, the control of the mission of UnoDeuce, in which over this next season, we're going to be talking about those who have had an impact on the company and the journey that it's been on. And today I'm going to be talking with another friend of mine that has actually kind of challenged a lot of the creative storytelling that we pride ourselves on by offering up some really unique opportunities to tell stories in different areas of the country. And that is my friend, Vance Blackfox. And so this is him. Vance, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me today. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, quote unquote. See you.
Right. You.
Oh, so where are you today? I know
Well,
that's a green screen behind you. I understand that, but
mhm.
you are the Uber traveler. So where could you be found right now?
Right now I'm in a tiny little community called Zeb, which is where I live in the middle of the Cherokee Nation Reservation in what we currently know as Oklahoma, which is the original homelands of the Caddo, Osage, and Quapaw people. So this is where I reside with my mother and hanging out here today, though I just got back home yesterday. So you're right. I'm on the road a lot.
So where was coming back from? Where were you?
Yeah, I was in Louisville, Colorado, at Christ the Servant Lutheran Church, where I had a chance to lead the church in the blanket exercise this past Saturday, and then I also had a chance to preach, which is always nice. So it was good to be there amongst friends. And then previous to that, I was at Lenore Ryan University in Hickory, North Carolina, to do a lecture and a panel and those types of things. So it was good to be there, but good to be home.
Oh, that's awesome. But before we get into our journey, why don't you explain a little bit about what you do?
Okay. A little bit of what I do. So presently, I am, and quite frankly, it's a new development for me. I am the director of ecumenical and tribal relations for a new organization called Indigenous Theological Circle, which is an ecumenical organization working with both indigenous leaders of ministries, congregations, and organizations in the different denominations, mainline denominations in the United States, to assist them in the things they might need to help their ministries and congregations and communities grow and thrive, as well as working with those leaders that aren't, say, ordained yet, but potentially looking for that opportunity to become ordained. And so, providing a variety of experiences around discernment or actual scholarship or actual experiences related to theological education. So, pretty new stuff. We hadn't had this type of work happening in Indian country in regard to the Christian church in a long while. So, to have that recreated and have it launched just January 1 of this year has been really exciting. But in addition to that, I do a couple other things. Still supporting different ministries in the ELCA, like the repudiation of the Doctrine and Discovery Task Force, as well as the Truth Seeking, Truth Telling Initiative on Indian boarding schools in the ELCA. And so, really finding myself doing some work to support the partnerships that I helped create with some other really great people in the ELCA, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. In addition to that, I am the uh, director and or creator and director of the organization called Otherwise, which is a cultural education, cultural immersion program that we mostly do in the summer times, which we'll probably talk about here a little bit. And so we've continued to do work in urban Denver, in borderland Texas, borderland San Diego, and here in Cherokee Nation. So I'm also a presenter and speaker around different places wherever I'm invited. So just a lot of things going on.
Yeah. After I asked that question, I realized I might have to tag on another half hour just to just go through all your credentials. But for the most part, that's how actually Vance and I met 20 plus years ago at an event for Lutheran Youth Ministry. I bet you didn't remember. Do you remember that?
That was just a couple years ago, right? So no,
A couple,
no.
couple, yeah, a couple of years ago. We'll go with that because we're only like 30. I mean, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
So
29 here, 29.
exactly. Yep, yep. So yeah, we met there, and since then we've become really good friends
Mhm.
and stayed in touch. And I wasn't kidding about because Vance in and of himself is a very creative individual. He's a storyteller by nature, and so that is another reason how we were able to connect so easily. And I'll never forget the first project that you tasked us with. I wonder if this will jog your memory. 2006
Mhm.
ELCA gathering. Like he mentioned, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America had a national event called the ELCA Gathering, youth event for high school students. But he was in charge of an adjacent program called the Multicultural Youth Leadership Event, and he tasked us with doing some very interesting graphical situations. It was really cool because he wanted to introduce his team, his youth leadership team, using anime. How did you come up with that idea? Because we
Well,
did it.
we
We
did
did
it.
it.
Y'all did it.
Yeah,
Y'all did it.
yeah.
Y'all did it. It was really great. It was one of the highlights, I think. Well, I think one of the challenges that I had always run into when working with the ELCA Youth Gathering was the equity in between events that were happening in the church. So for the large
Mhm.
event, which was mostly white audience, a lot of white young people from around the country and around the church, lots of investment. And one of the things that I had learned from my mentor, who was the man who created the youth gathering all those years ago, was looking at how do we make sure that we're continuing to center the multicultural event, the differently abled event, the LYO convention, center that in order to make the event, the youth gathering in general, which because these events were all happening either before or during the large youth gathering. To make sure that it was that the event in general was a justice event, and so part of that justice for me was making sure that we were creating story, that we were being creative, that we were using resources and creating a new technological and or different looking at different ways in which to tell the story using technology and so that was just one of the things that came to mind for me was how might we utilize some visuals, animation, to be a part of the front stage, the mass gatherings, if you will. And so yeah, so that was just one of the ways in which I was thinking about how do we create something new, of something that's memorable to folks. And I think that piece alone, that was it was really small. It was probably a 3 minute segment, but maybe five, of introducing these people utilizing this animation. And I think it was impactful not just for the young people who were leading, whose faces were turned into cartoons, if you will, but also to the group, the participants, the 1,000 people that were gathered. So yeah, just always looking for a new way in which to impact young people's thoughts about how we are present with one another and how ways in which stories are being told, but also that church can be a little cool and unique and creative. And utilizing anime in that way was one way in which I thought we could do it.
Which was incredible. I mean, as for myself, it was really a collaboration with me and another one of my partners that had more of an animation bent. So we were able to really. It was fun. It was a lot of fun to craft that, and it was
Yeah.
like really early on in our the UnoDeuce timeline. It was like
Hmm.
5 years in, and we did that, and it was just an amazing thing that I'll never forget. And it's what really irks me is like I wish I would have had foresight enough to really archive a little bit better.
Hmm.
Massive moves. I lost a lot of different things due to several
Sure.
different moves and
Hmm.
that. So, oh well, because people are asking me about, do you still have that? Do you still? I was like,
Hmm.
oh man, that was like 15. Well now you're talking 2006. That was 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was a fun event, a fun situation with that. But it didn't stop there. As one of the more impactful things that we were able to do as an organization was to, and this is how you've actually expanded this curriculum a bit, because at the point where you had us go to First Oaks,
Hmm.
and it was part of the, I believe, Lutheran School of Theology's youth and mission program,
Hmm.
in which if it was like you mentioned, cultural immersion. It's a different type of, or it was yeah, and we went to Oaks first, and then we went to Eagle Pass. Let's talk a little bit about that program, what was established, and what were your idea was for that to be captured.
Sure. Yeah. So the youth and mission program had been around for some time, and they had been actually really successful in those early years of the program to bring in a large number of young people. And so they were going to places like El Salvador and Mexico, which we did too, underneath my leadership. But I needed to make sure that we were looking at ways in which to continue to draw people and to have age appropriate experiences as we were growing. Hopefully, the participant numbers again as they had been shrinking over time. And so when I came into that position as the director of that program, I began looking at ways in which to think through what people needed to learn. Oftentimes, when people are thinking about mission in the church, we think about service project. And that's been the case for a long time. I always go around telling folks. In fact, I talked about it this past weekend, how for the first 400 years of Europeans being on Turtle Island, mission meant converting or killing Indian people, Native people, Indigenous people. And for the last 130 some years, the church understanding of mission from the church has been service project, helping the poor, brown and Black people, Indigenous people, without ever really having conversations about why are brown and Black people poor in this country, right? Why do we look for those places to go in the church to help? What caused that to happen? We never had that conversation really. So I wanted to switch that up. I wanted to have young people begin talking about, well, what is mission? And if we look at it from a perspective of Jesus, right, and Jesus's mission is about relationship building. It's about building relationship and not necessarily relationship with people over there or way down the road, but rather people in our own communities. So how might you still travel to a place to learn about difference, to learn about people who are different than you, and then go home and practice, these new skills you might have learned with youth and mission, to go home and be engaged in your community there. And so we had these leaders from all over the country coming. And so we created an experience in Cherokee Nation, which you mentioned Oaks, which is my hometown. And there we have a historic Moravian and Lutheran ministry there, which was a boarding school at one point in time and now continues to be a residential care facility for Native young people. Um, and so I'm excited about having young people experience that. And I've been doing that for a long time. But for the longest time, we'd had people coming in their white vans to just do service and to paint walls and to bring Jesus. And hello, we're one of the oldest Native Christian ministries in the United States. We had Jesus. Right. So what was it then that Native people need to be offering to non-Native people in their beginning to understand mission differently? So in addition to that, so our sophomores, right? People
Yes.
going into sophomore year of high school would go there. So it was a graduated program. And then we did Borderland, Texas. people don't understand that the border story, right? The Texas borderland story is actually the borderland story of the whole United States. And so understanding that history was important. So our juniors went to the border. So we had out in Austin and San Antonio, had incredible cultural interpreters, both from both sides of the border, and then went to Eagle Pass to spend some time learning about what it means to be caught in between for some folks. The border and the rest of the world. So Borderlands has a great the Borderlands is a great place to learn story, but also learn about continued oppression and genocide. So that's a whole thing. And then the seniors would either go to Mexico or El Salvador, which was a traditional trip. But I wanted folks to learn first about Indigenous peoples from here. And I want to learn folks about the politics and the sadness that exists around Borderlands sometimes, but also the liveliness and the life-giving things that happen at the border before going across that border to other countries. To learn about Indigenous people there, we need to learn about the Indigenous peoples here. And so we created that graduated program, which was pretty fantastic. So to have UnoDeuce, to have you there to record some of those stories, that experience was threefold for me. One, I wanted the church to see a new way of understanding mission, of course. So how do we spread that language and that understanding what mission is supposed to be, and it's not service. Service is important. Come do an otherwise program, and we'll talk to you more about that. But we didn't want to do service. We aren't doing service project. We need to do learning. And so, but to have you there to really help us get the message out, but also to give the young people a review, right? A video for them to be able to share with their people in their own community about some of the things they learned. And then thirdly, to make sure that we began sharing the story not just with the church, but with those communities that we were going into to show the impact that they're having. And so the stories, telling the same story through video that you helped us produce was actually a story that was going to have different types of impact on 3 different audiences. And so we wanted to utilize that tool and that gift in that way. So today that's helped us then grow into a new organization beyond the Youth and Mission program to Otherwise, which is the organization that I helped create, or I created with the help of other folks who are continuing to do that work with us, like Kenna and Rochelle and Pam and others and many others. You can go to our website, otherwise.red, to see some of those folks and hear, or to see the list of names of folks who've really been impactful in helping us create Otherwise programming.
Yeah. It was an amazing thing because how we constructed our production days was the first thing we did was we interviewed the youth prior to anything happening. And then we would travel with them, just get their initial reactions, which was kind of a cool thing to really start off with. And then you follow them around. You follow them as you experience what they're experiencing that moment. You're seeing it through their eyes as they go from one thing to the other. And then at the end, we talk to them again. Say, it was kind of like reflect back. Okay, so these are your initial thoughts. How do you feel now? And I really enjoyed seeing that type of growth in such a short amount of time. And just being able to be there as we, as just to follow along their path, their journey, and to illustrate that, which was really neat. The most impactful thing that stuck with me out of those 2 were obviously the moment where I wasn't allowed to use my camera, because we went to have a conversation with Border Patrol. And one of the most impactful things was the tension between the Border Patrol agent and one of the students. When he asked a point blank question, and it immediately agitated the Border Patrol agent, that it was like his response was almost borderline, no pun intended, but borderline unprofessional in his response.
Oh yeah.
And it was like one of those situations where I was like, whoa, and I can't record any of this. So that would, well, which was which was one of those things where I was just sitting there going, do we have to de-escalate with something where you have this power struggle? There was this
Mhm.
power struggle between a youth and somebody who is not only in a position of power, but he was armed.
Mhm.
And it was just one of those moments that you could feel the tension,
Mhm. Yeah.
and I think that was a moment where, I'm looking around and the other youth were just in a moment of like, oh my God, is this really happening?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just, that trip was, I really liked the challenging aspects of how those stories were meant to be set up to be in a way, not only just educational for those who weren't there, but it was really a situation that, being immersed as a third party, fly on the wall
Mm.
role that I was supposed to have, just really, really stuck with me. I mean, because for full disclosure to everybody out there, we were hired to do a promotional video for, Youth and Mention prior to Vance going to it, and
Mhm.
but it was just basically a promotional video. We didn't get a chance to travel with them at that point in time, unlike with Vance, where you get to see the programming in action, and that
Mhm.
was so it was a little bit different, because different leadership, different ways of using video in those regards, and so that was that was. But what else do you remember about those trips that you had me, come on? That really,
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that comes to mind for me is just, and maybe this, and I say this, and maybe it's just generally speaking, I think we did a great job of building program that made sense, and was impactful. And so I, I can't necessarily give you examples. I probably could if I thought hard enough,
yeah,
small examples. But what I think about are the young people whom I can remember who had these light bulb moments. You had young people who maybe already had some experience out in the world, and then you had some who had very little, but they knew they needed, or their adults knew they needed to have this experience. And you could see that they didn't quite understand all the concepts, maybe, but they had a light bulb moment that, oh, that's why this happens. Or, oh, this history now makes sense. Or, how come we don't learn this in school? And so having the opportunity to be with communities and cultures that are so different than theirs, and recognizing that they might be in relationship with people who are native, or they might be in relationship with people who are, Latino or immigrant or black or queer or homeless, but to then have them be putting, pieces of the puzzle together about the things that are being kept from them, and then also the things they need to learn. And then you also have some young people who just don't, maybe aren't all the way into it, right? They're not really thinking too deeply about the things they're experiencing. That's fine. That's where people are in their development. But what the beautiful thing is that I know, and I think that you probably recognize that at some point in time, maybe back at high school or back at church or as they go on to college, when a professor or a youth director or a pastor or somebody says something in relationship to something indigenous, or has said something about the border, they will have a reference and they'll have a story to tell, which then brightens the bulb, right? Even more. And so that's the goal. It's how do we have young people? How do I do this with young people? And because I've also done this with adults and even aging adults, older folks. And their questions and their light bulbs are the same light bulbs as teenagers. And so, what does it mean that people have gone through their whole lives almost into their 50s and 60s, or and not had these conversations or not had these experiences. And so to have young people having these experiences are so key. So it's the light bulbs, me remembering the individuals, the young people, their faces, and the questions that they were coming up with, and the ways in which then afterwards they share. One I think about, whom you got to know as well, was Mikey Serrano,
Hmm.
who sadly 2 years after he went on these experiences with us, then was murdered in Chicago, south side of Chicago. But at one point in time, he was kind of commercial for us there on campus at seminary because his parents were in seminary there. And to see him come from this shell, or this very shy shell, give cover for himself, right?
Hmm.
Shelled off from the world a bit, and then to come out, and be able to, some ways regurgitate some of the things that I was saying and other people were saying, but also then to reflect, in a way, about the experience for him that was surprising to me, but also so impactful to the young people that he then was getting to talk to, that were going on the experience years after him. So those are the things that are exciting for me. And we have him on video too, telling a bit of his story. But then, to have him keep telling that story, until he died was so we honor him and we remember him. But he's one of those young people that was, so impactful, not just to me, but to others whom he was sharing with and telling the story to, both on video, but also in person. So that's the stuff I think about. Those are the young people I think about.
No, I think that's fair. And I also remember on the first trip that we did to Oaks, you had a couple of youth who were from a different reservation
Mhm.
who got to experience. They were from South Dakota, I believe.
Yeah, they were from the Pine Ridge Reservation.
Yeah, and it was interesting to talk with them and hear their observations
Mhm.
where they were and learning about a different area,
Mhm.
different and yeah, it was just it was just a great mix of people and a great experiences that we will never forget, and we
Mhm.
appreciate the opportunity that you were able to give us in those first the young early days, and then
Mhm.
obviously the middle stage days, because those trips to Pass and Oaks were both in, I think, the 2010s, around those times. But
Mhm.
yeah. So, Vance, with all the stuff that you've been doing and all the things that you've been constructing, this is something I ask all of my guests, but
Okay.
what do you do to wind down, decompress? What are the things that you're able to help you refocus by doing something else? What is that something else that you're doing?
There's really not much. I mean, because the things that I've listed are not, it's not even the full list of all things I'm doing, right? I'm writing
Yep.
books and serving as an editor on a book series, and so lots of work to be done. I'm the caregiver for my mother, so just busy, busy, busy. But in normal times, going to water is important to me, both maybe even spiritually a little bit because it's a Cherokee tradition, but also just being in water. So going to the creek, going to the river, which you got to be a part of as well, both here in Oklahoma and in Texas. And some of my favorite places is where we went to. And so now that I'm living back in Oklahoma, getting to go to some of those places is important to me when it's, of course, warm enough, and I find the time to do so. So going to water is important. I'm very, my first degree is in film and TV. So going to watch movies. I know there's someone else in the room who likes to go to movies and give their
All the
reviews.
time.
So watching your reviews is fun to watch. I disagree sometimes, and that's okay.
That's what
But
it's for.
yeah, exactly. So having those conversations, and pretend with you, or just me getting to analyze movies, or just to look at production and think, wow, because I should have been a consistency editor. That's what I should have been. Like, her ponytail's missing. Where'd her ponytail go? Those types of things. And so just getting to watch movies, whether it be in the theater or even here at home, and just to relax a bit. So with all the busyness, just finding time to have downtime, can be a challenge. But those are two things that I like to, if I can find that downtime. So it's a good question.
Awesome. Well, thank you for spending a little bit of time reminiscing and talking a
Yeah,
little bit about how you've made an impact on me and this organization over the past 25 years. Really appreciate you stopping in to share in those stories. Thank you, Vance. Appreciate
absolutely.
it.
Well, I just want to say thank you for being my friend and being such a good support, a great support, quite frankly, of all the things that I've been about over the years. And you've been an incredible partner in ministry in those ways for me, but also a great cheerleader, and friend. So just thank you for all those things, Paul, and to introduce for all the things you're doing out in the world with your team. So I'm grateful to watch.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you all out there for watching another episode of Mission Control. Remember to subscribe to all your podcast platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, so you don't miss another one. And next time we come back out with an episode in another couple weeks, we will be talking with our very first intern, Alyssa Sattler. So stay tuned for that. If you have any questions, email us at missioncontrol@UnoDeuce.com. Don't forget to rate and review this podcast and all the ones that are coming or that have been there. And we will see you next time in the Control Center.